Well, the Dolphins already traded first-round picks twice this offseason.
They are manipulating it.
From 3 to 12 and then back from 12 to 6. And they could make a third move before the draft next week. According to Ian Rappaport, Miami has fielded calls from teams looking to acquire the 6th pick and is considering a move back down. I don't know what that tells me from the Dolphins' perspective, because they do need an offensive line. And you would like to see them add another skill player.
I got to tell you something, though, is that 6 is a weird spot for them. So they don't need a quarterback, right? They're not going to do that.
Right.
And what they could use is offensive line. They may be looking at Elijah Vera-Tucker for USC. And if you look at all the mock drafts and the people I've talked to, he's going to get drafted somewhere 11 to 15. And so if Miami goes, all right, Denver, we'll go down to 9. Denver, you don't have to go up to 4. We'll just give us one first-round pick, because they already rated the Texans.
Right.
So they've done so well, Joy, in this draft. Now they don't have to be as greedy. They go to Denver and say, hey, instead of going to, if the Atlanta doesn't draft a quarterback, you could have Fields and Trey Lance. The Bengals aren't taking one. You just come up to us at 6.
So who they trade with, to me, is the question.
I think it's Denver.
If it's not Denver, though, because there's been some talks about possibly the Patriots or the Bears, if you're Miami, you do need a high-level offensive lineman. And I would say you also need to add a skill position. You need another wide receiver. So how far back are you moving in the draft? If it's the Broncos, I feel like you can still get one of those top 3 offensive linemen at 9. At 15, I don't know what space you're in for that. That's quite a bit to move.
Your concern is, I think the Chargers draft 14, don't they?
13.
Okay, so the Chargers, if Elijah Vera-Tucker is available, they're going to take him or J.C. Horn, because they need a corner and a left tackle, and those will be the 2 best on the board. I mean, that's what you'd figure the Chargers would take. They would take the best corner available if Patrick Surtain's gone, or the best O-line, and Slater and Penei Sewell are gone. So for Miami, it's what Jimmy Johnson talked about yesterday. They don't have to be as greedy now. They've already done great getting picks. And they just go and say, we'll just move 2 back, because what we need, Elijah, they can get there. So, we always think when you move out of a pick, it's okay to move back just 1 spot or 2. You don't have to, especially the way the Dolphins have accumulated picks.
Yeah, because they don't need that many picks. So that's the only thing that concerns me. I'm like, don't move back too far. You don't need that many picks. And what you need, they do have at the top level of the draft, an offensive lineman and a wide receiver.
Right.
So, Broncos make sense. Anything further down the draft to me seems a little risky. So there's very high expectations, obviously, for Trevor Lawrence as he prepares to start his NFL career. And as soon as the draft happens, we will all submit our comps, which I'm sure will be very reasonable. His college coach, Dabo Swinney, thinks Lawrence can be a transformational star in the league. He had a very interesting comparison to an NBA player.
If you watch Steph Curry shoot the ball, it's just like, you just go, wow. Just to sit there and watch this guy shoot a basketball. Well, that's how you feel when you watch Trevor throw a football. When you get to see him live and you get to see him move, you just go, wow. I mean, it's just different. He's a face of a franchise guy.
He also talked about how he feels like he can be one of those players that transcends the sport, and he didn't say OBJ, but someone who's an international superstar. And to me, that's what OBJ was a few years ago. I don't know that he's in that space now, but
I don't know if he doesn't feel like he'd want to be that.
Well, no, but sometimes it doesn't really matter what you want. It's like if you become that level of star, which I think will have to be a significant amount of winning, because obviously Jacksonville is not a huge market. And while I don't think you have to be in a huge market to become a star or a superstar.
Got to win games, though.
I think you have to be if you look at LeBron, right? LeBron is in Cleveland. Still managed to become a international superstar because he was that great. If he didn't end up having the career that he had, I don't know that he would be the star he is, because where you are does kind of matter. Jacksonville isn't a massive international brand, despite that they play a lot of games internationally. Right. So I'm not saying that's not what Trevor's going to be, but to the point of transcending the sport, he does have the look. He's got the sunshine hair. He's a star already from the years that we've seen him play in college at the highest level. So he does have the potential to do that. So the Carson Wentz era with the Eagles came to an abrupt end this offseason. He was traded to the Colts, and there's been a lot of talk about who should take the blame for that relationship falling apart. And Peter King thinks most of it should be on Carson Wentz.
I probably blame Carson Wentz more for the Carson Wentz thing than I blame the Eagles. I'm honestly mind-boggled at the reaction of Carson Wentz. This is the big boy league. You've got to understand that the best part of ability is availability. And if you're not there, you might not be there. That team has to buy insurance for if you're not there.
Yeah, I disagree with that take.
I would go 50-50. I do think a lot of the blame is on Carson Wentz because I don't know what Carson Wentz went through with the Eagles that was so unprecedented. And I think that that's Peter King's point. Now, he did talk about what happened with Tom Brady and then bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo and how did Brady respond. He went on and did quite a bit of winning since they brought Jimmy Garoppolo to the Patriots. But Tom Brady also moved Jimmy Garoppolo out. It's not like he just beat him in fair competition. Like, he was better, obviously, than Jimmy Garoppolo, but he also played a role in him leaving New England. Carson Wentz didn't have that power to, say, I don't want Jalen Hurts here. But to Peter's point, you're not available. You are not reliable physically. So
he's a reckless player.
You can't necessarily blame the Eagles for drafting what they planned on being a high-level backup quarterback.
Yeah, but they've increasingly drafted poorly. I think that's the thing. They've had to go pay money to get a Darius Slay and wide receivers because they butchered so many draft picks. So I think... Yeah,
but his issue was not that they were drafting poorly. He doesn't have the power to say anything about that. His issue was Jalen Hurts. I just think he fell apart mentally. Like, it was just too much, everything that was happening, him not being available, and Jalen Hurts, and then, the dysfunction within the organization that we know played a role in all of this falling apart. I do put some blame on Carson Wentz.
I'm 65-35 Eagles. You're 50-50. Peter's probably 80-20 Wentz. So, by the way, we'll have an answer by November.
Yep.
We'll know where it's at.
Well, I mean, look, I don't know that I don't have high expectations for the Eagles at all, and I don't know that Carson Wentz going to the Colts is like their success is going to be necessarily on Carson Wentz. They were pretty successful last year and have a much better culture. So I don't know that apples to apples that's comparable, but I think that when you are in a situation, to Peter's point, like, this is a big boy league, you know what comes with it. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to handle it the same way. There's stuff that goes on in our business. Some people can handle it, some people can't. That doesn't necessarily make you a good or bad person. It's just a lot to deal with, and sometimes you weren't prepared for that. But that doesn't mean that you didn't have to handle it in the moment.
Eagles have a little bit of an Enron feel to me. We were captivated for a couple years with them, and then you find out what happened behind closed doors, and a lot of it was a con. And, like, when I hear the owners ripping the coach every Tuesday...
It was absurd.
I'm like... remember Enron, the business, smartest guys in the room, and all of a sudden... for like multiple years, it was like the hottest stock. And then you find out it was a complete con. Like, I don't even look at Philadelphia today like I did 3 years ago. I thought they were an elite top five franchise in the building, executive suite. And then
remember all we could hear about was how we can win the fun way.
And all of a sudden now I'm like, it's just a con. It's ridiculous.
I do not have high expectations for the Eagles this year.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And